Like Andrew said, my name is John. We came to City North. It was like, first time was February of 2017. The church had been in existence maybe 5 months, I think, by then. And when we first came the first time, I'm kind of one of those guys that thinks about stuff a long time, usually to the frustration of my family. And we came out of that first time that we came to City North, and Jennifer, my wife, said, "That is the place we need to go. This is the place," and I said, okay, I will. I'd like to go another time, but anyway, so, and here we are now. Been here all this time. And I'm actually kind of the weird one. I'm actually from Sunbury. There's a lot of us that live here, but I grew up here many, many years ago and went to school here and everything. And in fact, I grew up in church too, and I know that not everybody has grown up in church. We all have. That's what I really love about this place is everybody's backgrounds are just kind of different. And we all have different ways of coming and seeing things. And I grew up going to church every Sunday here in Sunbury. But growing up here in Sunbury, things, even though I've lived kind of I guess I kind of think of it as a regular life, but life is not always easy. When I was young, growing up here, I went to school here, and I was thinking about how things have changed in Sunbury in all these years, in this 60-some years that I've lived here. Changed a lot, and that's the title of this message, called Changes. It's called Changes, and life is full of changes, isn't it? Just changes. Sometimes when we're young, we think that everything is boring and things aren't changing, and we want them to change. But when you get older, things are changing, and you don't want that change. But I was thinking about how life is full of changes, and I thought about Ohio weather. I don't know if you're from Ohio, you've heard this. In Ohio, if you don't like the weather, just wait, it will change. Yes, the weather will change. Might not be good. It might change from yucky this way to yucky the other way. We've had nice weather here recently, but it's going to change today. Another thing, I was thinking about changes, and the first change that I can think about that I remember growing up was when my mother had a little baby and I had a little brother all of a sudden. Now, my sister and I were, a year and a half apart, and I don't remember a time when I didn't have a sister, but I was 6 years old when my little brother was born, and all of a sudden, my life really changed. I wasn't the center of mom's attention anymore. My parents would tell you I had a little brother. That was a big change. It was a big change. Thinking about other things. Starting school. I remember starting school. Now, here in Sunbury, back in the dark ages when I grew up, we didn't have kindergarten in school. I went to a private kindergarten earlier, but so first grade was my first school. And I lived here in town, and on first grade, first day of school, I walked to school by myself. We're kind of shocked by that now. And I walked to the school that's right down the street here. That was where I went to elementary school. That was a big, big change, going to school. You grow up being at home, and you're just kind of just living life, and nothing. And then all of a sudden, you got to go to school, and you're with all these other people and everything. Another change, the biggest change, graduating school. I graduated school here from Big Walnut back in 1980. And that was a big change, because all of a sudden, your life wasn't prescribed for you. You wasn't, okay, get up, go to school, get up, go to school. All of a sudden, I was in charge of my life, good or bad. I had to decide what I was going to do. It wasn't dictated to me. So that was a big, huge change, graduating from school. And life is just full of changes, but the next big change was a few years after that. I met a girl. I met a girl. Now, I had dated a little bit in high school, but I didn't date very much. I didn't have many girlfriends at all. I know you're shocked, but 2 or 3, maybe it was like maybe 2 or 3 years after high school, I met a girl, and she was great. And my days were filled with that. I would get up in the morning, go to work, get done with work, get in the car, drive to her house, spend all evening there, stay as long as I dared, go home, sleep, go to work, go to her house. Did this every day practically every day. And I loved it. It was great. It was great. That was my routine. We'd been dating maybe a little over a year. And it was I think it was after Thanksgiving sometime, and my wife, the girlfriend was 19, and she lived with her parents still. And so one of her traditions was she had a little Christmas tree on a stand in her bedroom, and she was putting that tree up, and I helped. And we're sitting there decorating the tree and all that, and all of a sudden I just come to realize that she's standing there looking at me, and she's standing there doing this. And I go, and I don't remember what I said. I turned and looked at her, and she said, "So are we going to get married or what?" Big change. Big change. Have you ever imagined a proposal like that? Big change. We did get married. Still married. But life is full of changes like that, isn't it? But they're all not all good changes like those were. Those were good changes. Sometimes changes cause struggles, don't they? Some changes not always good. There's that other saying, when life gives you lemons, you make. Yeah, there you go. Right. As it turns out, that's a pretty shallow saying. You know, I like lemonade, but struggles in life aren't sweet, nice juice. They're hard. They're hard. I always think of things, when I think of trying to demonstrate concepts or talk about things, I always think of stories or movies. So I'm going to try to talk about changes in regards to a movie. You know this guy? Oh, well, maybe he needs the hat. There he is. That's Woody. Woody was the chief toy in the little boy's room. It was the favorite toy of Andy. And I'm talking about the first movie he was in. And Woody was the favorite toy. And he was kind of the leader of the toys. He took his leadership job very seriously. And so he organized the toys. He saw that all the toys were happy. If there was a toy that was neglected, he worked on that. He was a benevolent dictator, maybe. He was in charge. Well, the big thing, though, birthday came. It became the little boy's birthday, and now the toys are all wondering who's coming to live with the toys next. And if you remember the movie, they were very interested in that. And all of a sudden, here comes the presents. Gets closed. We don't care. Gets the toy. The toy shows up for birthday. Remember him? What's his name? I think Buzz means something a little different now. Buzz Lightyear. Buzz shows up. Now, at first they're excited. Buzz is going to join the family, the toy family. But as it turns out, the status quo doesn't stay. It changes. there is a change. Woody doesn't handle that change very well. He doesn't handle it very well at all. The other toys, love Buzz. He's different. But the worst thing is the little boy Andy. Andy loves Buzz. And where Andy used to go and take Woody everywhere he went, he didn't do that anymore. He took Buzz. Buzz was the new toy. And Woody didn't handle that very well. This was a struggle for Woody. Struggles in life are like that. Something changes, and things happen. My little sister, a few years ago, we found out that she had a lung disease. And her lungs would fill with fluid. And for a while, she kind of dealt with this. And then she had to be on oxygen sometimes. And then she had to be on oxygen all the time. And then COVID hit, and it was very dangerous for her to go anywhere. So she had to stay home. And fortunately, she had this great job she had where she worked from home. But that was a big change for my sister Amy. She couldn't go anywhere. She couldn't see her family. We called her on the phone regularly, and I did take my mother down to see her on a few occasions. Life struggles. Struggles happen. Some of you know, on January 30th, ironically, that was my dad's birthday. On January 30th this year, I had a stroke. I didn't know I had a stroke. I thought that the first thing I noticed was that I had this permanent headache right in the front, and I thought I had a sinus infection. So I did what I always do when I get sick. I ignored it for a week, which is normal for me. I ignored it for a week. And then I had a regularly scheduled day off on a Friday, so I decided to go to the doctor, take it really seriously. So I went to the medical professional at the drugstore. And I got a prescription for what I thought was wrong with me. I got an antibiotic, although I must admit that the nurse she wasn't really on board with it, but she knew it wouldn't hurt me, so she went ahead and did that anyway, I think. And so that was on Friday. As the weekend went on, Jennifer noticed, my wife, that something wasn't quite right with John, with me. I was telling her something and then repeating it 5 minutes later, like I didn't know that I had ever told her. I still had that really bad headache. I was really, really exhausted also. And she said that I really needed to go to the emergency room. And so, as I always do when she tells me what to do, I ignored that. So finally on Monday, I said, okay, I'll go. And we went to the emergency room, and they did a whole bunch of tests, a whole bunch. And they found out I had a stroke. A stroke. There are no strokes in my family. I'm the first one. What is going on? Big change. Big change. You know when you break your leg, they say, okay, you're going to be in this cast for this many weeks, and then you're going to have this for this many weeks, and then you should be able to walk on it by... When you have a stroke, they say, we don't know. They got nothing, because everybody's stroke is different. And they don't know if you're going to get better. If you get better, they don't know how much, and they don't know how long it's going to take. Big changes. Big changes. In the Bible, it made me think of a guy in the Bible named Saul. And we're going to talk about Saul a little bit. But Saul, now if I accidentally call him Paul, it's because Saul was called Paul later. He had like two names, and I've tried to figure out why, but I think it was the Roman version of his name. It was the same name, it was just a different ethnic background on it. But Saul was an up-and-coming golden boy. He was a graduate of the Jewish rabbi school. He was really, really smart. He was, as far as I could tell, he was about 30 years old. And he knew a lot of things, and he was the big star of the church, in the Jewish church at that time. And he was heading for big things. Well, this is about the time that Jesus' ministry was before this. Jesus had his ministry. He died on the cross and rose again, and he was with the disciples for a time and then went to heaven, and the disciples were in charge of the church now. Saul saw this as a real threat to the Jewish church, and he made it his mission to stop this Jesus thing, to stop this Christian church. So he went about persecuting the Christians. One of the first stories we hear about the persecution of Christians was the stoning of Stephen, the early Christian. And in the Bible it says that Saul was there for that. And we're going to start reading in the book of Acts, chapter 8, verse 1. And Saul approved of their killing him, that is Stephen. And on that day, a great persecution broke out against the church in Jerusalem. And all except the apostles, that were the disciples, were scattered throughout Judea and Samaria. Godly men buried Stephen and mourned deeply for him, but Saul began to destroy the church. Going from house to house, he dragged off both men and women and put them in prison. So Saul saw this opportunity to really squash this Christian church. Later on in chapter 9 in Acts, meanwhile, Saul was still breathing out murderous threats against the Lord's disciples. And he went to the high priest and asked for letters to the synagogues in Damascus, so that if he found any there who belonged to the way, that is the Christian church, whether men or women, he might take them as prisoners to Jerusalem. So what had happened was that he had successfully squashed the Christian church in Jerusalem, and he was heading to another city in order to do that. Now, in order to have permission to do this, he got the letters from the Jewish leaders, and that's how you got permission to do that. So he was on his way traveling to Damascus now. And as he neared Damascus on his journey, suddenly a light from heaven flashed around him. He fell to the ground. He heard a voice say to him, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" "Who are you, Lord?" Saul asked. "I am Jesus, who you're persecuting," he replied. "Now get up and go into the city, and you'll be told what you must do." Now the men traveling with Saul stood there speechless. They heard the sound, but did not see anyone. Saul got up from the ground, but when he opened his eyes, he could see nothing. So they led him by the hand into Damascus, and for 3 days he was blind and did not drink or eat anything. Big change. Big change. How do you react to big changes in your life? It kind of says something about us. Sometimes it would be easy just to deny they exist. That's kind of what I do sometimes. I just say, okay, never mind. I'm just going to ignore that. Sometimes you fight against it. That's more Jennifer's style. We're both very different. But those are two things you can do. You know, changes you don't like, this is what you can do. You do. What did Woody do? These changes. I don't know if you remember in the story, Woody decided that Buzz needed to go. He needed to be gone. So he tricked Buzz into going and rescuing another toy, hoping that Buzz would get lost and be gone. But as it turns out, the other toys were very upset about that. They didn't like that they did that Woody had orchestrated this accident. And so Woody was in the same boat now. Now Buzz and Woody were both lost toys. And now they had to work together to try to get back to where they wanted to be. My sister Amy continued with her disease. About a month ago, we got a call from Amy's daughter, my niece. Amy would talk to us and tell us, and not really keep us updated on the condition of her disease. And my niece called us and said, it's a lot worse than she's letting on. She's really bad. We didn't know this. Amy had been in and out of the hospital, but every time when she came out, we would talk to her and everything was fine. She'd go back to work. So I talked to Mom, and I was going to take my mom down to see Amy because we had heard that it was really worse than what we thought. And a few days later, we get another call from my brother-in-law, Amy's husband, said that if you want to come see her, you better come quick. And I couldn't leave right away, but I called my daughter, and we went down. We started driving down. Now, Amy lived in Lebanon, down near Kings Island, so it was a couple hours drive. And we get almost there, and I get the call that Amy had died. What do you do? How do you react to life changes? How do you react to that? Like I said with my stroke, they couldn't really tell me anything. They say, well, you should probably do this. You should have the speech therapy. I went in speech therapy. I had lots of other things. And you just work and you try to get as better as you can. And thank God, I got some better. And my stroke wasn't near as bad as it could have been. I've regained a lot of what I needed. And 4 weeks ago, I started back to work. But how do you react? Okay, let's find out what Saul did. Starting in verse 10 there where we left off. In Damascus, there was a disciple named Ananias. The Lord called him in a vision, and he said, Ananias. Yes, Lord, he answered. The Lord said to him, go to the house of Judas on Straight Street and ask for a man from Tarsus named Saul, for he is praying. In a vision, he's seen a man named Ananias come and place his hands on him to restore his sight. Lord, Ananias said, I've heard many reports about this man and all the harm he's done to your holy people in Jerusalem. And he has come here with the authority from the chief priest to arrest all who call on your name. But the Lord said to Ananias, go. This man is my chosen instrument to proclaim my name to the Gentiles and to their kings and to the people of Israel. I will show him how much he must suffer for my name. Then Ananias went to the house and entered. Placing his hands on Saul, he said, Brother Saul, the Lord Jesus, who appeared to you on the road, is coming as you were coming here, has sent me that you may see again and be filled with the Holy Spirit. Immediately something like scales fell from Saul's eyes, and he could see again. He got up and he was baptized, and after taking some food, he regained his strength. Saul spent several days with the disciples in Damascus. At once he began to preach in the synagogues that Jesus is the Son of God. So that's what Saul did with his struggles. He listened to God. It's not easy to do when you're struggling. Paul's life went on, like I said, Paul was about 30 years old when this happened to him. And I just recently found out that at the end of Paul's ministry, which lasted some 30 years, and you read about Paul in the Bible, Paul is like, well, I say Paul now, he was like one of the foremost teachers of the gospel in his time. And when he was finally killed, he was executed by the Romans, I just found out that he was about my age now. He was about early 60s, I think. So that's what Paul did with his life. I'm going to switch gears really, really abruptly here. It's kind of like, for the guys that know trucks, it's kind of like switching gears without pushing in the clutch. I want to talk about my love of maps. Maps. Now, when I was younger, I had a subscription to the National Geographic, and the one thing about National Geographic is every so often they would send the issue with a map in it. Now, I got rid of all my National Geographic, so I kept all the maps. And I got maps. Here's a map of, this is a map of 1976 Ohio map. Here's oh my goodness. This is a really old map. In this map, it's all about the exploration of North America. There's another map, Yellowstone National Park map. The one thing about maps, though, is they have a title and they cover a certain thing. Now, here's the Holy Land. So, one thing about paper maps is the paper map actually defines what area you're looking at. It defines what you're looking at. And a lot of people laugh because I have paper maps. We don't have paper maps anymore. In fact, there are probably no paper maps in my car or truck right now. There used to be lots of them. The glove box was full of paper maps. Not anymore. What do we use for maps now? Yeah. Now I've got my map pulled up here. There's a dot in the middle. What's the dot? Yeah, the dot's me. So we don't use these paper maps anymore. We use the map here. The one different thing about the paper map tells you where the middle is. The paper map tells you what it's all about. This map has a dot, and it points at me. Our lives are a lot like that dot, aren't they? The map of our life is the dot, and we put ourselves in the center. Can you see the problem with that? When we put ourselves in the center, we don't leave a lot of room for God to work in our lives, do we? That map in the center, that dot, is us. But it really should be something else, shouldn't it? Every time I struggle, and I have had struggles, and maybe when we have these changes that are tough, we kind of put the dot on ourselves. And we really should put our dot on God. Where's the center of your map? Mine isn't always on God, but it should be. When you have life struggles, where do you go? Where do you go? Let's pray.